It's a long road to recovery. The economy grows at 7.3% in FY15, just a whisker below the government's 7.4% target. Fourth quarter GDP at 7.5% beats forecast, but third quarter GDP is revised lower sharply. Recovery in industries and the agri sector remains anemic.
The situation is clearly conducive to rate cuts. Whether 25 basis points or 50 basis points, is a debate.
I'll be surprised if I don't see a 25 basis point cut. The
possibility of a 25 BP rate cut on 2nd June looks a distinct possibility.
Calls for a rate cut get louder. Former RBI Deputy Governor Subir Gokar says there's no reason why the Reserve Bank should not ease interest rates. Most market watchers expect a 25 basis point cut on the 2nd of June.
Bulls come alive in late trade on the Lal Street cash market. Volumes hit historic highs as the Nifty reconquers 8,400. The Sensex rallies over 300 points as the June series gets off to a flying start.
The Ranbaxy integration drags Sun Pharma in the fourth quarter. Profits plunged by about 44%. M&M posts a steady quarter, but tractor sales disappoint.
Starting a new business is all set to become easier. The government plans to end the permission Raj, adopt self-certification as the new mantra. That's a CNBC TV 18 exclusive.
Some judicial pronouncements or a legislative intervention will have to determine those facts.
जो consumers क्या कहते हैं कि अब e-commerce है, कभी-कभी तो पैसा जमा हो जाता है, सामान ही नहीं आता है.
Both the Finance Minister and the Food Minister reiterate the need to regulate the e-commerce space. Paswan launches a scathing attack, accuses some online retailers of fooling people. The national capital is set to scale new heights. Urban Development Ministry notifies a land pooling policy for New Delhi. Decks cleared for 25 lakh new homes to be built. IIT Madras bans a student group after the HRD ministry sends an anonymous complaint. Students cry foul, claim they are being targeted for criticizing the Modi government and its policies. IIT Dean refutes those charges.
A defined Sepp Blatter is all set to get re-elected as the president of FIFA. This comes days after several executives of the organization were arrested in a bribery scandal.
I think you've taken the word out of my mouth. Cautious and confused. I don't think we have to cross 9,000 in a hurry. And if it takes 3-6 months, I'm not bothered. Every rise has to be digested, both in profits and valuation. I can tell you one thing: we know the top. I don't know the bottom.
Cautious and confused. That's Rakesh Jhunjhunwala's outlook on the markets. While he refused to play any bets on the near term, he's confident that the bull market is still well and truly intact. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. Hi, Nandara.
Good evening, Shireen. What a Friday's been. GDP data, big interviews. We've got a jam-packed show for our viewers today.
Absolutely. Let's get straight to the top story tonight. GDP growth has hit the highest year that we've seen in the last 4 years, with India overtaking China in FY15. GDP growth in the last fiscal has come in at 7.3%, and growth for the fourth quarter has beaten estimates at 7.5%. However, the numbers also contain several shades of grey, most notable of them being agriculture. Ritu Singh takes you through the GDP internals.
It couldn't be better timing for the Modi government. As it goes about advertising its achievements since coming to power, it now has another reason to smile. India's fourth quarter growth numbers trumped estimates to come at 7.5% versus the street's estimate of 7.2%. For the full year, India's FY15 GDP grew at 7.3%. Although a tad lower than the government's advanced estimate of 7.4%, the full year number is still up by about 40 basis points from 6.9% in FY14. At this pace, India has added another feather to its cap by outpacing China, which grew by 7% in the March quarter. A pleased-looking finance minister says the numbers prove that there are visible signs of recovery in the economy.
It's absolutely clear that the economy is in a recovery mode. What seems to be a silver lining is that the manufacturing sector is now growing. There is a huge scope with all the steps that the government has taken and will take in the course of the year. Our potential to grow into a higher league is certainly there.
The data, however, also contains some shades of grey. While growth in the first quarter was revised upwards to 6.7% and the second quarter number was revised to 8.4%, the third quarter numbers saw a sharp downward revision. Q3 growth stands at 6.6% versus the earlier estimate of 7.5%. Coming to the fourth quarter, agriculture and services have been a drag on the GDP, while trade and manufacturing provided support. For the entire fiscal, agriculture remained subdued, stalling to a growth of just 0.2% compared with 3.7% last year. However, industrial growth rose to 6.1% versus 4.5% in FY14, and services improved to 10.16% from 9.1% last year. The government says agriculture growth was hit by factors beyond its control.
Both manufacturing and services, which are broadly within the control of policy, have improved, whereas those two sectors which are somewhat outside the control, agriculture because of the monsoon, and exports, which are closely related to foreign demand, those haven't done as well. So had those two also been a little more cooperative, I think these numbers would have been even better than they are now.
Although GDP numbers have improved over last year, the pace of recovery remains slow, building greater pressure on the RBI governor to cut interest rates. All eyes are now on the Reserve Bank of India's upcoming policy on Tuesday to see whether Governor Rajan obliges or not. In Mumbai, Ritu Singh.
Well, joining us now to talk about the GDP data is TC Anand, the Chief Statistician of India. Mr. Anand, appreciate you joining us here. Let me begin by asking you about the way that you've gone about these calculations. As we just talked about, several shades of grey as far as the GDP number is concerned. While you've beaten estimates coming in at 7.5% for Q4, for FY15, tad lower than what was estimated.
The overall figures which are coming in on Q4 are in line with the data which has been coming in since our advance estimates. If you look at it, I'll just draw your attention to 2 points. One, subsequent to our advance, the Agriculture Ministry released the third advance estimates for the year, and those are lower, so agriculture came in poorer. But our IIP for manufacturing came in better in the last 3 months compared to what we had at the time of the advance. So our manufacturing has gone up. The corporate performance reflects a mixed picture, with some segments doing better, other segments doing worse, and the overall picture is in line with the additional information which came in the last 3 months. Okay, you're saying the overall picture is in line with the latest data that you're getting, but let me talk to you about the figures that have been revised for earlier quarters. You've seen an upward revision and a downward revision. I want to talk to you about the downward revision because that's fairly sharp. For Q3, you've seen an almost 90 basis point downward revision, and there is a fear of a downward revision for the Q4 figure, which has come in better than estimates at 7.5%. How do you respond to that? See, all revisions are driven by data availability. Now let me explain what is the additional data which became available at this time, which was not available when we prepared the Q3 and the advance estimates. First figure which has changed is agriculture. Now whenever the agriculture annual estimate changes, it impacts all the quarters. Now at the moment we only have the third advance estimate for the year. Agriculture Ministry will be revising the estimates for the year as fuller production data for the last quarter, last half of the year becomes available. Now, obviously, that will have an impact on the estimates which we gave. We will have to wait and see how those numbers come in. Similarly, we will get a more complete picture on corporate filings because at the moment we have only advanced filings. Now, we will get a more complete picture of corporate filings as we go ahead. Now, depending upon how they come in comparison to the advanced filings, our numbers certainly can be revised one way. This is natural in the course of national accounts estimations all over. Okay, let's talk about agriculture in specific because we've seen it decline by about 1.4% in the fourth quarter. Now the worry or the concern is that we could see a further downside if we see a subpar monsoon, and that could impact the GDP number for FY16. What are you most concerned about as far as the agricultural sector is concerned? subpar monsoon, how much it will impact FY15 is not so easy to predict. There is evidence in the past when poor rainfall has not led to a decline in production. It's really not so much the aggregate monsoon as its distribution, which I suspect makes a bigger difference to the overall figures. So we will just have to see how the monsoon plays out before I would want to hazard a guess on what the impact on production would be.
Fair enough. Let me then ask you about the GDP figure and whether it corroborates with the high-frequency data that we're seeing. Corporate earnings continue to look lackluster. In fact, this quarter has been a dismal quarter in several quarters that we've seen. Credit growth continues to be at historic lows, 18-year lows. Auto sales, mixed bag. Two-wheelers continue to be down in the dumps. Passenger car sales have improved, suggesting that there's a divergence in consumption between rural and urban India. Does your data reconcile with the high-frequency data that we're seeing?
See, I'll tell you one thing, something which you should keep in mind about the new series of GDP. To the extent these are used, in the segments where these are used, the GDP numbers match what you see in the high-frequency data. But a part of the GDP, particularly its use of the MCA database, has brought to light a segment of the corporate performance which was earlier effectively invisible in our calculations. Now, this is the smaller end of the corporate segment. If you notice, the corporate data available through stock exchanges, etc., cover only about 4,000 to 5,000 companies, whereas we are now picking up close to 3 to 5 lakh companies. The smaller end of the corporate segment does behave clearly what has been shown in the new series GDP from the past. Now, from what is visible, this is a thing which we will have to accept and build into our analysis as we go ahead into the future.
Okay, that's an interesting point. You're saying you're assessing a much larger universe than just the Nifty or Sensex companies. But what is your sense as far as manufacturing is concerned? Because the finance minister is saying that is the silver lining and that shows up in the data. Do you anticipate a sharper acceleration in FY16 for the manufacturing sector in specific?
I'm hoping it will, because the general pattern in manufacturing over the last 5 to 6 quarters of IIP production, and as we are seeing in the GDP figures, has been on an upward trend. So if this holds up, I think we may be seeing the signs of a manufacturing revival, but so far the figures have been good.
All right, so far the figures are looking good, and we hope that there isn't a downward revision for the Q4 GDP numbers as we saw for Q3. TC Anand, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on India Business Hour. Now, what will the Reserve Bank do on the 2nd of June? Most economists and market watchers believe a 25 basis point rate cut is very much on the cards. I spoke with some top economists after the GDP numbers were out, and here's a slice of that conversation. 25 basis points, a done deal on the 2nd of June. Agam, let me start by asking you.
Yeah, we do expect a 25 basis point cut on the 2nd of June. And we will be surprised if there's no cut on the 2nd of June. So looking at the way the inflation numbers have panned out in the last couple of months and other factors, I think the rate cut is the need of the day, and we're hoping for a 25 basis point cut on the 2nd of June.
Okay. Soumya?
Yeah, I think before I just answer the question, 25 BP cut is, it's most likely on the 2nd June, but small caveat, I think the numbers, as I can see, are far worse than what we had anticipated. For example, if you look into the gross value added, the GVA number, which is 6.1% for Q4, which was supposed to be 7.8% for Q4 so I think the numbers are far worse than what we had anticipated earlier.
You're saying the numbers are far worse than what we had anticipated. Any other areas where previously you were not that concerned, but now on the basis of the details that are coming in, that the numbers are looking far worse than what you were expecting and what was
I'll tell you, for the 2014-15, for a gross value added figure of around 7.4%, which is the government projection, we had to have a 7.8% Q4 growth rate. But as of now, I can see that the growth rate has actually come in at 6.1%, so which is significantly lower than what it was projected. Similarly, for Q3 also, from 7.5% to 6.8%, only the Q2 of the last fiscal has been revised upwards.
Industries for the entire year has come in at 4.05 versus 4.5%. Industries at a little over 10%. What's disappointed you the most in terms of the sectoral growth?
Well, yes, very clearly, and especially when you talk in terms of, in the context of RBI policy, I think the growth and pricing power in the industrial segment remains extremely important. And for several quarters, beyond 1 year, we haven't really seen any uptick, any major recovery in this particular space. And we are not really very sure at what pace the recovery will come in. So, because as we see, the capex plan, the private capex space is still looking pretty weak.
All right, let's bring in the former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, Subir Gokarn, into this conversation. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. FY15 GDP number coming in at 7.3% versus 7.4%. Growth still seems to be anemic. The full-fledged recovery that we were anticipating or hoping for continues to be elusive. How are you reading these numbers, and what do you now expect in terms of the window of opportunity as far as the Reserve Bank of India is concerned?
We are not yet, and I think we're still some distance away from seeing an investment recovery which is really going to be the foundation of a more rapid recovery and also transition to a higher growth trend. There are no signs of that yet. That's showing up in all kinds of other indicators: credit growth, profitability. All of these point to relatively weak incentives for investment. So it's not a bad situation. We're moving out of the bottom, but at the same time, I think we need much more push factors for investment to recover. And critically, I think the one pivotal factor there is going to be public investment in infrastructure, which I think we have to see coming into play very quickly. That's going to be the basis on which private investment will also revive. So I think that to me is the big question mark at this point. How soon are we going to see that process unfold?
Okay. How important is the RBI in terms of, pushing that incentive by maybe another 25 to 50 basis points? Or do you think there has to be something more done?
As many of your panelists have said, the situation is clearly conducive to rate cuts. Whether 25 basis points or 50 basis points, is a debate. And whether the monsoon risk is significant enough now to stay the RBI's hand is another question. But I think going by the inflation numbers, and since the RBI has now more or less formally adopted an inflation targeting approach, it shouldn't really be worrying about anything else. If inflation is low and growth is low, it's an unambiguous argument for rate cuts. There is no conflict of interest there at all.
Poll in terms of what we can expect on June 2nd from you all as well. I'll start with Soumya. A quick one-line answer from you from you, and then we'll follow it up with Siddharth and then Tirthankar.
We are expecting a 25 BP cut on 2nd June and possibly some liquidity easing measures.
Okay. Siddharth?
Yeah, I'll be surprised if I don't see a 25 basis point cut. The key point here is what is the guidance and the tone of the commentary. Given that he is likely to cut, he might be on the side of a little bit of caution, not so dovish as in April, but certainly a 25 basis point cut is on the cards.
Okay, and Tirthankar, your sense in terms of whether FY16 will be better as well?
Well, 25 basis point cut, that's for sure. Or guidance could be slightly hawkish, reminding us that risks do arise, risks are there and something to be cognizant about. And FY16, I'm guessing a 30 to 40 basis points hike on FY15 numbers.
So that's a unanimous verdict. Expect a 25 basis points cut on the 2nd of June. Will the governor deliver? Moving on, will FY16 be better for growth? A lot of that is going to depend on the monsoon. Things are looking a bit dicey as the heat wave continues to grip large parts of India. The death toll due to the searing heat has now crossed 1,800. The vast majority of those deaths is concentrated in the southeastern Indian states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Together, those states account for 1,750 deaths. Deaths have also been reported in Delhi and other states, including Gujarat and Orissa, where temperatures earlier this week peaked at a sweltering 47 degrees Celsius. In Delhi, it's still around 45 degrees.
And joining us now to talk about the onset of the monsoon is BP Yadav, the Director of the Indian Met Department. Mr. Yadav, appreciate you joining us. First, let me start by asking you about the current heat wave conditions and whether we are likely to see any relief anytime soon across India.
Two things. First, that the heat wave which was there for the last 1 week when temperatures rose up to 47 and 46 degrees centigrade in many parts of the country, particularly over Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, has now subsided a lot. Temperatures have come down during the last 48 hours over northwest India, central India, and also over the parts of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. The heat wave has abated from Delhi NCR region, Haryana and Rajasthan. It has also abated from coastal Andhra Pradesh, which was one of the worst affected region because of the high temperatures. Their temperature has come down. Also over Telangana, although currently heat wave are prevailing, but still the temperature is about two notch lower than what it was 48 hours before. Similarly, the situation over other states of Odisha and Jharkhand, where also temperature has come down. Having said that, I will like to add that yes, of course the temperature has come down, but still they are above 40 degrees centigrade over entire northwest, central, east India. Many of the places it is still 45. Vidarbha it is 45. In some places in Odisha and Jharkhand it is about 45. At some places in Madhya Pradesh and South Uttar Pradesh, East Assam it is 45. So although there is some relief, but yet still the temperature remains high in some of the states.
Okay, there is some relief, but the temperature continues to be high. But Mr. Yadav, what about the onset of the monsoon now? Is there any delay that you anticipate in the onset of the monsoon?
Usually, we all know that India gets first showers of the monsoon starting from Kerala around 1st of the June. This is the normal date, and what we are seeing as of this year in 2015, that monsoon has arrived over the Bay of Bengal. Yesterday it has entered into the southern part of the Arabian Sea and then Comorin area and the Maldives area. But to declare the monsoon current arriving over the as an onset burst over Kerala, there had to have some minimum amount of rainfall, the strength of the wind, the depth of the wind, and the cloud amount. That has not yet happened. There is gradual building up of the monsoon current over the Arabian Sea, and we expect that it will take another 3 to 4 days before monsoon can come over Kerala. So there may be 3 to 4 more days people have to wait for the arrival of monsoon over Kerala.
Well, people are waiting with bated breath, sir. 3 to 4 days is what you anticipate before the monsoon actually hits Kerala. But let me ask you about your forecast as far as the monsoon itself is concerned, because there has been sort of a divergence of opinion. The Met says that it's likely to be a subpar monsoon. SkyMet is forecasting a normal monsoon this year. Has there been any change in your forecast as far as the monsoon itself is concerned?
No, not at all. India Meteorological Department is the nodal agency to issue any weather forecast and warnings, and long-range forecast of monsoon is one of the prime activity of IMD and the Ministry of Earth Science. We have already indicated in the month of April that this year the monsoon is likely to be below normal, and the probability of below normal is quite high. We have said that it will be only 93% of the total amount of rainfall which we usually receive in the monsoon season, and add to it plus minus 4% of the model error. We have not changed any of these figures. Of course, we will update our forecast that in the month of the June. But currently, the situations which are there globally, regionally, we don't feel that there is any chance of increasing the figure. It may be
so
the possibility of a below normal monsoon, high probability of below normal monsoon.
High probability of a below normal monsoon. You're sticking to that forecast. Very quickly, sir, in exactly 10 seconds, the distribution of the monsoon, which are the areas that are likely to be most vulnerable?
very difficult question, but very important, I know that. And as far as the initial signals are available to us, the northeast and the south India is likely to get near normal monsoon, and the central and the northwest India is likely to get below normal monsoon. This is the probable scenario as it looks now.
We'll have to leave it there. Appreciate you joining us, BP Yadav of the Indian Met Department, sticking to their forecast of a below normal monsoon. High probability of that is what he has to say. Appreciate you joining us here on India Business Hour. Well, after a tug of war with the bears for the last few days, the bulls have finally broken the shackles and some records as well. The Nifty cracking a century to reconquer the 8,400 mark. What's more heartening is the cash market volumes have hit their highest level today, indicating strong participation. So the Sensex up 300 points within touching distance of 28,000. Mid-caps also higher by about 2% today. Nadar.
Shrin, the big bull Rakesh Jhunjhunwala believes the market is in a consolidation phase and feels the Nifty may revisit the 7,900 to 8,000 level. In an exclusive conversation with Udyan Mukherjee, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala asserts the market is expecting a rate cut by RBI in the 2nd of June policy. He says it will be a big sign. It will be a sign of weakness if the market does not move up when the RBI does cut rates. Here's an excerpt of that conversation.
What is it that pulled the market up? Right? I mean, there is a cyclical upturn in the Indian economy, there's no doubt about it. India is structurally a very, very good story, there's no question about it. That we had a government about which we were optimistic, and I'm optimistic today also, right, which will bring about a lot of change, decline in inflation because of decline in commodity prices, and a consequent decline in interest rates. You know, my good friend Mark Faber has said that bull markets go up on rising profits, declining interest rates and mysticism. So we have had, we are having and we are expected to have further declining interest rates. We are setting the base or the stage for a very good growth and a continuous growth in earnings. So, I mean, market will pause, has paused. I think market is going to take time. I don't think we have to cross 9,000 in a hurry. And if it takes 3-6 months, I'm not bothered here. And it's going to take time is my opinion.
Sure.
Market's not going to go up.
Let me turn the question around. Would you say then that in the next 3 to 6 months, the base for the next phase of this bull market will be formed, whether it's 8,000 or 8,200 or 7,800 or 7,500? Do you think in the next 3 to 6 months, we'll form a base at a level which will probably not violate for maybe through 2016, 2017?
No, I think if we believe, if I say that India is in the mother of all bull markets, and if we believe that that bull market is alive, then I think the base which we form, that bottom should never be violated here. See, I had said even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when will you have a true bull market? And when will the mother of all bull markets be confirmed? We crossed 6,300, we came to 9,200. Let us suppose we have made the bottom at 8,000. Maybe it could go to 7,900, maybe 8,000, we already made it, we don't know. It could further go down also, I don't know. When it crosses 9,200, it's absolutely tested. It's a bull market.
And you can catch that exclusive conversation with Rakesh Jhunjhunwala this Saturday at 9 p.m. and Sunday at 8:30 p.m. right here on CNBC TV 18. And here's some food for thought for the government. 15% of India's population starved last year. That's the startling finding of a report released by the United Nations. In fact, India is on top of the list with 194 people undernourished. China is the second with 134 million people. Pakistan the third on the list with 40 million people. Food security remains a distant dream even in the 20th century for many Indians. So India and China both talking about who pips whom as far as GDP growth rate is concerned. But that's another stark reality that both countries need to contend with. All right, on that note, it's time for us to take a break. But up next, starting a new business is all set to become easier. The government plans to end the permission raj. That exclusive story when we return.
And it's a bitter pill for Sun Pharma in the fourth quarter, but automaker M&M delivers a mixed bag.